right, what is happening? Thanks so much for joining the conversation on this Wednesday, March 8th. It is International Women's Day. Yay. We're talking about the Texas coach who's under fire for what's being called racist statements, and then we'll talk a bit about the family who's suing an Airbnb after their baby girl died at one of those rental properties. Want to welcome you to Fox Soul's Black Report. I'm Courtney Hicks.
And I'm Nicordelai Corte, plus online bots soliciting guns to Black Twitter, and an emotional message from Michael B. Jordan. They're the stories that impact our people.
Yeah, it's our news, our views, and our voice. So let's get into the top conversation today. Everybody's been talking about it. Latavia Tay McGee and Eric James Williams were brought back to a hospital in Brownsville, Texas, in a convoy of SUVs and ambulances escorted by Mexican military and National Guard trucks.
That's right. The daytime kidnapping caught on tape and widely shared on social media renewed criticism of the Biden administration's handling of the border and its response to the cartels.
Attacks on U.S. citizens are unacceptable, no matter where or under what circumstances they happen.
2 of 4 Americans kidnapped in Mexico last Friday after crossing the border from Brownsville, Texas, have been found dead. According to the State Department, the 2 survivors are now back in the U.S., brought to the border Tuesday in ambulances with a military escort. The remains of those killed, however, are still in Mexico.
Ultimately, we want to see accountability for the violence that has been inflicted on these Americans that tragically led to the death of 2 of them.
While the U.S. hasn't released any details of the investigation, Mexican officials believe the cartel may have hit the Americans by mistake. A victim's relative said the group traveled to Mexico from South Carolina so one could get a tummy tuck medical procedure. Shortly after crossing the border, their minivan came under gunfire.
It's very common for a lot of people in Brownsville, a border town, to go to Mexico to do a lot of their shopping and, etc. But this kidnapping is something that is very unusual.
The brazen daytime kidnapping caught on tape and widely shared on social media renewed criticism of the Biden administration's handling of the border and its response to the cartels.
And we are fighting as hard as possible. The DEA and the FBI are doing everything possible to dismantle and disrupt and ultimately prosecute the leaders of the cartels and the entire networks that they depend on.
Wow, so much to unpack here.
Yeah.
Big discussion across social media. You know, everybody gets into the conspiracies and everybody has something to say in the comments section as this story continued to unfold. We've got, a lot of different descriptions of what actually happened, a kidnapping, mistaken identity, as mentioned in the package. Were they there to get medicine? Were they there for the cosmetic procedure? I had also heard that they were previously there in Brownsville in a hotel. They got a little lost with GPS. They called the center, the clinic, for directions. That was the last the clinic heard. So lots of information still coming out. The bottom line for me is I'm hoping those facts can be cleared and be more definite so the family has a narrative of actually what happened, and then we can go forth with justice.
Yeah, and also what's so sad about this, I understand that 3 of the 4 were there providing just moral support for their friend that was going there to get a tummy tuck, to get a medical procedure. And it's so sad that that trip turned out to be, their last. And the enduring trauma of the survivors of this is also well noted. And it's important that our soulmates know that the State Department, has sort of a high alert for people that are traveling to Mexico. We certainly have heard stories of the drug cartels, really posing a significant danger, particularly to tourists. And so, while this may be a case of folks being in the wrong place at the wrong time, it is a truly tragic story.
I refute sometimes wrong place at the wrong time because, you should be free to be able to travel. In the package, they said that, folks from the Texas side have gone over for medicines and groceries because, they happen to lean on the cheaper side of things. A lot of people debating in the comments whether they should have went or not. She took 3 people with her to feel protected. Should she have not gone in the first place? So right now, aside from all of the chatter, I'm hoping they'll get justice, clarity, and justice.
Yeah, well, we hope so too. Well, the National Trade Association of Black-owned newspapers is being joined by other media companies that are urgently requesting footage from January 6th. they're pressuring Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy, to provide copies of the 41,000 hours of security tape that was given to other news outlets regarding the January 6th insurrection. Now, the National Newspaper Publishers Association has made 2 requests, both of which have gone unanswered by Speaker McCarthy.
So I'm thinking with this, it's reminding me of the Tyree Nichols case where, the damage has been done. We've lost that brother. We're not going to be able to bring him back. There's 20 more hours or so of video that was debated on whether or not to be released. I'm kind of in the same vein, like at this point with the January 6th insurrection, more footage. At this point, what would that prove? What would that show? Why the request to see more of that footage? What would that accomplish at this point?
Well, I think what Republicans are trying to do is to craft an alternative narrative to what has come out from the January 6th committee. And you even have Congressman Benny Thompson, who chaired the January 6th committee, saying that if Speaker McCarthy is going to release the footage, you should release the same footage to everybody, right? You don't just release the footage to one outlet. You should, be even-handed and release them to all outlets. And so the National Black Newspapers Association is saying, please release the footage to us. There shouldn't be such a thing as, the white press, get some information that the black press doesn't get. And so, Speaker McCarthy has yet to respond to the National Black Newspapers Association, but we're going to keep our eye on this.
No response is a response. We shall see. All right, tens of thousands of convicted felons have officially regained the right to vote in several states. In Minnesota, the governor signed a new bill into law that restores the voting rights of felons once they leave prison. Now, under a previous state law, felons were banned from voting in Minnesota until after they finished parole or probation. Meanwhile, lawmakers in at least 14 states have proposed a wave of legislation restoring voting rights to individuals with past felony convictions.
I mean, this is a big deal. There are millions of ex-felons across the country that have not had their voting rights restored. And so Minnesota is just sort of the latest state in what is a national trend of now almost 24 states that are doing the work to renew the voting rights of ex-felons. It's my view that if you've served your time, then why not have your voting rights restored? These are our brothers, our sisters, there are our family members, there are folks in our community that have a stake in what happens in our community, and that means that their vote should count.
But on the other side of that, I think people get caught up a little bit more in the weeds, and maybe they should. What type of felon was it? And if voting is a right, because you violated society in a sense, should that right be revoked and be revoked, long term or never given back? So I can see the other side of this argument. However, I do believe in restorative justice as well, and so I'm hoping as we move along, these other states will follow along and institute something like this as well.
Yeah, a major deal. Now, the majority white and Republican-led Mississippi Senate voted this week to pass its version of a bill that would allow an expanded role for state police and appointed judges inside the majority black capital city of Jackson. Critics say that in a state where older African Americans still remember the struggle to vote decades ago, the bill is a similar attempt to intrude on local decision making and voting rights in the capital, which has the highest percentage of black residents of any major U.S. city.
Well, when you tap into social media and what folks are angry about, what they're hollering about, what they're debating about, they're throwing this back to like the Jim Crow days. They said it's very reminiscent. Those folks who've been around Jackson, Mississippi for a while, very reminiscent of the Jim Crow days. And even the younger people are tapping in, maybe revisiting that history and saying, yeah, this feels and looks and sounds like the same sort of kind of thing.
I mean, even Mayor Lumumba of Jackson says this harkens back to apartheid. I mean, how is this even legal? Are we watching separate but equal doctrine, rear its ugly head in Jackson, Mississippi? A place that formerly was a part of the Confederacy. This does not seem fair. It does not seem just, and I don't see how we can allow this to stand in the United States in 2023. And so, the governor has not indicated whether or not he will sign the bill. A lot of people suspect that he will, but he has not indicated that he will. But this is of great national concern, because if they're allowed to get away with this in Jackson, Mississippi, then imagine other states with Republican governors, with Republican-controlled state legislatures, what they might do to dilute the voting power and the agency of black folks across the country.
The more things change, the more things stay the same. All right, moving on here. A French family is suing Airbnb after their 19-month-old daughter died while staying in a rental unit. Now, the couple says they put their daughter down for a nap and found the lifeless body 2 hours later. Now, an autopsy revealed the toddler had fentanyl in her system. Police say the previous renters threw a party where drugs were involved, though authorities they've yet to file any criminal charges. The parents claim the property was never cleaned properly. They tested negative for that fentanyl. Airbnb issued a statement saying, quote, our heart goes out to the family for this devastating loss.
So, Courtney, now we've got to worry about going to our Airbnb rentals, and if we have young people with us, if we have young toddlers with us, we have to worry about their exposure to fentanyl. I mean, there's so many things that we have to worry about in the world, and never would I think that this would be one of them. It's a really terrible story.
Yeah, well, not just to fentanyl, but to anything, harmful. You really don't know, what those parties do from visit to visit, and you are trusting that the owner of that or operator of that Airbnb has hired a cleaning service to clean it thoroughly. It's really like a trust factor, and I just hate that now there may appear to be some sort of risk with renting an Airbnb, especially one that's, shown and posted to be beautiful and wonderful and will, accommodate whatever you're looking for it to do. Is very sad. They're saying some kind of exposure, maybe some kind of touching or something. But I was really surprised that the parents tested negative. So I'm wondering what area specifically maybe that baby was in where that exposure kind of happened. But very sad. Very sad.
Yeah. Well, Texas Tech has named black assistant coach Corey Williams interim head coach for the men's Big 12 basketball tournament this week, following the suspension of head coach Mark Adams. Now, this comes after what the university calls inappropriate, unacceptable, and racially sensitive comments. The coach aimed at one of his players, the Texas Tech official saying that Adams was quoting Bible verses that included references to slaves serving their masters. Adams has said he was simply trying to point out that players need to be humble. The coach has been humbled himself this year to the tune of 5 and 13 in Big 12 play.
Coach doesn't want this smoke, does he?
He don't want it.
He doesn't want this smoke, does he?
He don't want it.
With the day and age and temperament and culture that we're living in, this is the best example of, showing young men, in this case, obedience and what it means to fall in line with structure and things of that nature. I get that. That's a part of a coach's job. But that is the best example that you could give to these young men who predominantly black on your team. Man, please. He probably should be fired, if you ask me. Suspension?
It sounds very similar to a lot of stories that have been in the news lately where we hear of athletic coaches or teachers, that are, quite frankly, peddling in racist language, in racist tropes. Thank goodness that there is a racial justice movement that is alive and well, that is calling it out and holding folks accountable.
Yeah, it sounds like a default setting. So that's why I say, if they don't want to change it, in the method of operation, then you got to let them go. You got to cut them loose.
Well, is period shaming a thing in 2023? Never thought I'd say that. Well, the sight of a red blood stain on Kenyan Senator Gloria Oroba's white pantsuit was so startling that she was asked to leave. The senator said that it was an accident, and just before walking into Parliament, she looked down to discover that she had been caught unprepared by her monthly period. She said she thought about leaving, but then thought about the stigma around menstruation and how it affects Kenyan women and girls, and went into the building to hold the meeting.
Very bold, very brave. I don't know, for me, it still reigns as something very private and intimate. So for me, I would have maybe dismissed myself, or maybe have said, I'm gonna be a little late. I got a little adjustment to do. But I understand, why she went forth with that, especially, in that country and or that continent, really, and all that African women in particular have to deal with mutilation and arranged marriages, and just, not being able to be educated, just all that comes with being a woman in that part of the world. So I get it, and I applaud her bravery, especially in the midst of Women's History Month. Could I have probably done that? No.
But this is a teachable moment. It's a teachable moment. I mean, menstruation, it's a part of life.
It is.
And if it didn't happen, quite frankly, we wouldn't get here, right?
This is true.
And so, she's essentially saying, guys, no big deal. Right. Mm-hmm. Yes, this has happened, and instead of rushing off and finding a new outfit, like, I'm going to do my job and then I'll take care of that later. I mean, definitely a personal choice. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure if a lot of our soulmates might make the same choice, yeah. Right? But having the agency to be able to exercise your right to make that choice. I think that's part of the point that she's making.
All right. Well, coming up, ride-share companies are under fire for their employment stats.
That's right. We'll tell you the latest claims against both Uber and Lyft. You're watching Fox Soul's Black Report.
All right, soulmates, we are back. It's Fox Soul's Black Report. Thanks for joining the conversation. So there's a bill that could make the 4-day work week a reality for many of us right here in the States.
Come on. That's right. Democratic Representative Mark Takano of California reintroduced a bill that would make the 32-hour work week a national standard. The previous bill did not get a hearing in committee last year, and this new bill could have a tough path in the Republican-controlled House. But Democrats are enthusiastic about its potential to help Black American workers.
I know we talk about Black folk stuff here, but to really help all workers. This would just be such a fantastic measure to be passed. It's proven over in parts of Europe and Japan, in particular during the pandemic when everybody was cutting back and shutting down, that their employees were actually more effective with a 4-day work week, getting it in, and then enjoying, a longer extended weekend, to the point where some companies in those other countries aren't even going to go back to a 5-day work week after this particular study, after this particular thing, experiment that they incorporated.
And what's great about it is that there are employers and employees that agree. Not only are employers getting the productivity that they need, but employees are getting the work-life balance, and this may be, something that's been induced by the global pandemic. Yeah. I mean, we've all reimagined work in one form or another, and these laptops right here, they come in really handy because they've allowed us to do a lot of things that 5-10 years ago we weren't able to do.
I don't know if you bring this thing stateside and a 4-day work week for soulmates, we might clown a bit. We might not be able to handle that. All right, Disneyland has removed a lyric played during its park parades because it comes from a movie that has been long criticized actually, for racist portrayals of Black Americans. Now, for years, lyrics from Zippity Doo Dah, the signature song from the 1946 movie Song of the South, were part of Disneyland's daily parade featuring a myriad of Disney characters. But now the tune has officially been removed from the daily program. Song of the South has come under fire in recent years for its racist imagery and glorification of plantation life. Now, the movie even inspired the classic Splash Mountain ride. Following the Black Lives Matter protests in 2020, Disney announced that it would remove any references to the film.
I mean, and good for Disney. I mean, Disney pledged that they were going to do this. They said they were going to do this following the racial justice protests in 2020. and they've made good on their promise. And this is what raising consciousness around racial justice can look like. I hope corporate America is paying attention, because it's these sorts of acts, these sorts of demonstrations of correcting the narrative, correcting the record that I think, go a long way, and they're a big deal. Yeah. I mean, this was a song, that glorified plantation life, right? And there was nothing to be glorified.
Yeah, and
about
Disney is such a high profile company. I'm hoping that the trickle out effect will, have other folks with names similar take a look. There's a shopping center right up the street from me in my house in Georgia, and it's called something Plantation, and it just rubs me the wrong way, especially when you say the word plantation here in the States. You know what that implies or what that might bring up for other people. So I'm hoping, other folks take a look at those names that kind of hold that same weight and that same emotional feel.
That's right. I mean, there's nothing romantic about plantation life. There are so many oral histories and written histories out there, that make it clear that plantation life was a nightmare for a lot of our people. Right, and for the folks out there that don't get that don't understand, the trauma and the pain that harkens back to this period of time right here in the United States, then they need to pick up a book. Simple as that. Moving along, when Elon Musk acquired Twitter, he made it clear that eliminating spam bots was a top priority, but Black Twitter believes otherwise. That's because in recent months, some users have been plagued by a type of spam that directly violates Twitter policy. Automated replies from accounts offering guns for sale. The bots themselves, which are constantly reported and suspended only for new bots to take their place, appears to be activated by specific keywords. Now, any mention of firearms may summon them, but mainly it's the use of the N-word that has seen an increased number of gun-selling bots.
Wow. So I understand the complaint, but on the other side of that, maybe we should cease or bring that use of the N-word down if, in fact, they have gone about assigning keywords to these bots. I mean, I think it works both ways. We have the debate about, the appropriateness, or should we not use the N-word, why and why not. But at the same time, if there's more proof that bots of this nature that hold this kind of message are being assigned to the words that we, culturally use, then I think that's a hint and a half for us to revisit the conversation or the debate about using the N-word and formally approaching companies who do the stats and do the assigning and do all the digital stuff that they do.
Yeah, I mean, in this case, I think we're seeing an example of sort of the weaponization of technology. Somebody programmed that bot to be able to do that. That bot just didn't all of a sudden start doing this, and it fundamentally creates an unsafe environment for Twitter users, particularly for Black Twitter users, and it violates Twitter's own policy. And so what's Elon Musk gonna do? Are you gonna turn a blind eye, or are you gonna enforce the policy that you say you have?
Well, don't hold your breath. There's a new report that's finding rideshare drivers of color are being fired without warning. Now, according to this report, half of the drivers said they experienced racism, and 43% claim they have faced sexual harassment while on the job. 70% of drivers of color had either a temporary or permanent deactivation, compared to 57% of white drivers. Now, 30% of drivers said they weren't given an explanation of why they were fired, and 40% were told the app received customer complaints. An attorney for the drivers union said, quote, "The reality is that now app-based drivers can be fired, not even by a human being, but just by an app."
I mean, this is connected to the previous story that we shared about the bots on Twitter. I mean, you have technology, that is making decisions that are impacting the lives of real people, that's creating harm or risk of harm for real people, and we can't allow technology to just kind of, freestyle and do its own thing. If we don't rein this in, what other threats might technology pose, to its users and everyday people?
Yeah, but I'm not going to blame the technology. I think you got to go at and get at the people who are designing and computing the technology to specifically target, in this case, us. I mean, I don't think an app knows that you're black unless somebody designing or putting the information, entering the data, knows that you're black. I know for those drivers, you have to, fill out this application, your driver's license with your picture. So I don't know how that's determined, but it's who's programming these bots, these apps. That's who you need to get at. Technology is going to do what it's going to do. It's going to do what you tell it to do.
Yeah, there was a driver mentioned in the story that had, done something like 27,000 rides over a number of years for Uber or Lyft, I forget which one, and within a matter of a very short period of time, his app was deactivated, and the job that he had driving for Uber or Lyft, he had to find another job overnight to take care of his family. And so there are real life consequences to the technology making these decisions. But to your point, there are real life consequences when the folks who are designing these apps aren't doing so with us in mind. Just saying. A new Gallup poll shows some shocking numbers as it pertains to black women and their safety. Researchers found that less than half of black women in the U.S. report feeling safe walking alone at night in the area where they live, compared with about 3 in 4 black men and U.S. adults overall. That means only 46% of black women feel safe walking alone at night. That's less than half compared to the 75% of black men who say that they don't have a concern walking at night alone. Among all races and gender subgroups, black women are the only group in which less than half say they feel safe walking alone.
And I'm surprised, I'm surprised really at those numbers. Look, I want to feel safe, walking in my neighborhood. I live in here in Detroit. We have a home, predominantly black neighborhood, a little gentrification going on. So you see some, but there's no fear. When you see the white couple, the baby and the dog, no matter what time of day or night, there's no fear. And I just find it so ironic that, sometimes when I pull up in the driveway, there's a little fear there that somebody might come knock me over beside my head, take the groceries, take the purse. And I feel sad. It saddens me that I feel that way in my own community, been in that neighborhood. I'm 52 for 51 years. And I'm sad that fear is there. But I also find it very interesting that for those moving back, specifically white folks moving back into the neighborhood, no fear whatsoever. They will just go jog and ride the bikes and walk the dogs. So I think it's quite ironic, and it's unfortunate.
And part of it is a result of the climate that we're in. I mean, anti-blackness is real, right? Violence against women is real, right? And so I'm not surprised that if you are a black woman sitting at the intersection of those identities, that you would feel less safe walking around your neighborhood. And we saw similar numbers related to black men, though not to the same extent. But this is a moment in America, where when we talk about public safety, we've got to expand the conversations. It's got to be more than just our relationship with law enforcement, but it's got to be about our relationship with one another.
Yeah, it's black on black crime, but I always say we got to matter more to ourselves than before, we can want other people to matter for us to matter to them. So up next, it's time to start making our missing girls and women a priority.
That's right. We'll have the woman who started Black and Missing, Natalie Wilson, and Representative Richardson from Minnesota to tell us everything we need to know.
We welcome you back to Fox Soul's Black Report. So let's go to Minnesota, where black women are 3 times more likely to be murdered than white women, and their cases are less likely to be solved.
That's right. And a move to change this outcome, Minnesota's House of Representatives recently passed a bill that would create an office for missing and murdered black women. If the bill makes it through the Senate and is signed by the governor, it would create the first office of its kind in the nation, focusing on black women.
And here to discuss the bill currently stands, where the bill currently stands, and the state of black and missing women are Democratic State Representative Ruth Richardson and Natalie Wilson. She's the co-founder of the Black and Missing Foundation. We want to thank you both for taking some time out of your schedules and joining us today here on Fox Soul's Black Report.
You're welcome. Thank you for having us.
Representative Richardson, let's start with you. Why do you feel it is important to create a measure proposing the creation of a specific office for missing and murdered black women?
You know, it's such an important question, and what the data tells us, because before the precursor to this office was creating the nation's first task force on missing and murdered black women and girls. And what the data tells us is that cases involving black women and girls stay open 4 times longer than cases involving our white peers. So at the heart of this effort is a recognition that we need to ensure that black women and girls are getting the same attention, the same resources, and the same energy when it comes from law enforcement, when it comes from the media, and as we think about the community response to missing and murdered black women and girls.
Yeah, Miss Natalie, we want to bring you into the conversation, and when we tap into the National Crime Information Center, their stats, they're saying over 200,000 women were reported missing. This was back in 2020. Nearly half were black. So what are some of the distinct differences when we go missing in comparison to others? The first comes to mind is maybe media coverage and getting the word out.
Absolutely. Media coverage, there's a disparity in media coverage when our people from our community are missing. One, we are not household names, and that's what we're trying to do, ensure that the media coverage is fair across the board, because it does 2 things. One, it alerts the community that someone is missing, and they can be vigilant as they go about their day searching for them. But 2, it puts pressure on law enforcement to add resources to the cases. And what we're also seeing is that when a child or a minor is reported missing, they're typically classified as a runaway by law enforcement. And if you're classified as a runaway, you do not receive the Amber Alert, and you definitely do not receive any type of media coverage at all. And we are trying to do away with those stereotypes and those disparities that our girls are fast or promiscuous. They are our daughters and mothers and sisters that are missing, and we need to change the narrative surrounding their disappearance.
Absolutely. So when it comes to changing this narrative, Representative Richardson, do you think the Black and Missing bill will make it through the Senate this go around?
Yes, I am very hopeful that this will not only make it through the Senate chamber, but that it will also be signed into law by our governor. It is a priority for our Senate president, and it is a priority for the governor of Minnesota as well. And I just want to lift up the fact that this work is long overdue, because this crisis has just continued to intensify over the years.
Yeah, Natalie, you tapped into how critical it is when these cases are labeled as such, maybe, runaway, which kind of throws off, how people respond and react. So what more can governments and police departments and news outlets do, particularly on the local level, where these stories start, to help solve more of these cases?
Well, we have been invited to newsrooms across the country, and we ask one simple question: what is your policy when it comes to covering these cases? And many news outlets, they don't have a policy. And that's something that we are trying to implement. We would love to work with these outlets so that there's fair and balanced coverage across these newsrooms. And again, awareness is key, exposure is key when it comes to this issue, and we want our missing to be household names too.
Yeah. Ladies, as we move forward in this effort, How can our soulmates who are watching, when we scroll through social media, there's one story that we may, pay attention to, and there's one story that we may not pay attention to. And when we see these missing Black women in particular, what can we do to not scroll past that and really take that plea to find that person missing? As you alluded to earlier, it's someone's mom, it's a sister, it's a daughter. So we won't continue to normalize seeing us on missing posters.
Well, what we're finding is if this issue doesn't personally affect you, or you do not have someone that's missing from your family, you tend to disregard it.
Right.
But share this information. Be our digital milk carton. Help us to get awareness to these cases because someone knows something. And again, we need to be vigilant and to bring our missing home. Their families are desperately searching for them. So don't wait until a case goes viral. Help make it to go viral by sharing it and starting within your network.
Yeah, Representative Ruth Richardson, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think it's important what Natalie said in terms of ensuring that we're doing the work of lifting up these cases when we see them. And social media is an important place to do that. And at the heart of this office, one of the most important things that we are focused on is prevention and ensuring that we're doing the work to prevent people from going missing and to also prevent homicides of Black women and girls as well. And so as a community, we all play a role in this work and ensuring that we are playing the role to keep our communities safe and to protect Black women and girls, because with what the current data tells us, we are unprotected and we are not getting the same energy or attention in missing person cases or in homicide cases. And as the cold case rate continues to climb, we all can play a role there.
Indeed. Natalie Wilson and Representative Ruth Richardson, thank you so much for your time today as you continue the fight and the push in this effort. Happy Women's History Month and International Women's Day. We appreciate you so very much. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Same to you.
What a great interview. Oh my goodness, I just learned so much from those women and their incredible work. And it looks like they are not just a part of a movement, but they are really sort of driving this movement around racial equity and reporting when it comes to women and girls who are missing. I mean, to see this kind of work coming out of Minnesota is pretty encouraging.
Yeah, and the fact that this isn't a milk carton moment. When we scroll across social media and we see the missing, take that into account. This could be your little cousin, this could be your mom, this could be your aunt, and share it as the ladies encouraged us to do, and really get involved in bringing someone's family member home, or at least solving the case so the family member can be at peace and will know or what happened to their loved one. So, really important insight and background information, and I do believe we're going to continue to work in this effort to bring our missing home and to solve these cases.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to us doing our part to be a digital presence and a presence in media to lift this up. I didn't know that runaways didn't get Amber Alerts. I just learned that from your interview. Some of the outdated narratives, some of the stereotypes about Black women and girls, it really gets in the way of, being able to find our family members. And so, really great interview.
It's critical.
Yeah. Still ahead, an emotional Michael B. Jordan is in Hollywood for a once-in-a-lifetime Oscar.
Plenty of soulmates out there probably want to dab his eyes and wipe his face the moment that made him tear up. You're watching Fox Soul's Black Report. It is on the way. Oh, I'd have dabbed his little eyes. I'd have helped him out.
I know you. Comedian Mike Epps had a run-in with the law on Sunday when TSA officials found a loaded gun in one of his bags as he passed through security at the Indianapolis airport.
Yeah, Uncle Mike reportedly claimed that he forgot the gun was in his bag and was only in town for a show. Police found a .38 Special, that sounds just like Mike Epps, with 4 loaded rounds. Now, the gun and ammunition were, of course, taken in for evidence, and while Epps was not arrested, authorities have sent the case to Marion County prosecutors for a review.
You know, this story really makes me wonder, how often does that happen, where folks just forget that they may have, you know, some hashish or, you know, a firearm.
Did you say hashish?
I did. You know,
That's old school.
You know,
what you know about hashish?
I'm just
My mom and them used to smoke hashish.
I'm just saying.
Okay.
I don't know, you know, how often that happens where people forget what they have in their luggage.
I don't know. I'm
you know,
so
and they
particular
go
about
security.
what goes through what's in my bag. You don't check your bags and check what's in there. You don't, when you start to pack, it's not an empty bag already. Like, how, it happens. So obviously it happens, but you know, you don't check your bag. Like, when you're packing, you don't know what's in your bag and the compartments, and you have your toiletries over here, you have your t-shirts, and then you got your shoes tucked away over here, and then maybe over here you have a brush. Like, you don't realize there's a gun in your bag. You don't realize that, oh, where's my gun around the house? You know, where, you know, like,
which bag is that gun in?
Yeah.
I don't know.
And you go into the airport where you know it just stays on red. You know, you just got to double check and make sure with this day and age that we live in.
But you know, sometimes it's
lucky for him, his celebrity would probably save him, because anybody else would be locked up right about now.
And I don't think the gun was loaded.
Yeah, it was. It said there were some rounds up in there, whatever that means.
Yeah, there may have been rounds there, but I'm not sure if the gun was loaded. I'm just saying that, you know, we all forget things from time to time. You know, I lost my keys. Keys
and a .38 Special. That don't go together. They want us to move on. Rough Riders Entertainment is honoring late rapper DMX on the 2-year anniversary of his sudden passing. The label and crew are hosting a motorcycle caravan and ride-out celebration in New York City. This is going to happen on April 9th. It's going to include food, music, games. You know how we get together and do. DMX was known for his humility and was beloved by his peers in the industry. At his memorial service last year, you might remember his longtime partner, Swiss Beats, expressed his disappointment that X didn't receive as much love in life as he has in death.
Yeah, I mean, this is a very moving tribute. You know, what a great way to honor him. And sometimes, you know, people don't feel the love that exists for them when they're living. You know, but hopefully, you know, DMX can feel it in another realm.
Yeah, we got to get in the habit of giving people their flowers while they're here, you know, amongst us. That's for sure.
Yeah. Well, Chris Rock's new comedy special, Selective Outrage, is causing controversy.
You don't say. Not Chris Rock. No.
During the show, he compared Michael Jackson to R. Kelly, which angered Jackson's family members. Michael's nephew, Taj Jackson, took to Twitter to criticize Rock, saying he's bullied the Jackson family for years. Taj thanked Will Smith for slapping Rock at the 2022 Oscars for an insensitive joke about Jada Pinkett Smith's hair loss. Rock also faced backlash for admitting he watched Will's latest movie to see him get beaten.
You know, I thought it was an interesting joke. There was kind of like a shock factor there because, you know, either you believe Michael Jackson had some indiscretion with young kids or you don't, based upon the way Chris Rock structured that joke. Obviously, he believes that there were some discrepancies there, you know, with the children and Mike. I could see how the family will react. As soon as I heard him say that, I was like, uh-oh. You know, that's kind of low. I mean, we get the R. Kelly thing, but the Michael Jackson thing has always been debated, and he's been, you know, whether he's been proven innocent or just you know, paid the folks off, has left a lot of questions as to his innocence or not. But I get why nephew is a little upset. I think is he the one? No, that's not the one that's going to play him. The one that's going to play him is Jollof or Joloff or Giraffe or something like that. But I can see why they'd be upset.
I don't think he's the Ghanaian dish Jollof.
That was a tough joke. That was a tough joke right there.
I mean, you know, it was, but you know, Chris Rock is a comedian, you know, and you know, we all know that Chris Rock,
Cuts
you know,
deep.
sort of cuts deep, and he's not afraid to dig into controversy and maybe even create some. But on the other hand, because you know, the joke about Will Smith, it seems so. It came from such a personal place. You know, it feels like, you know, a case of hurt people hurt people.
Baby, the whole special was personal. Chris Rock was on a mission, and he did his thing.
He
for
called
sure.
it selective outrage
Whether
for a
you agree
reason.
with it or not. All right, actor and director Michael B. Jordan was honored with a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame just recently. Friends Ryan Coogler and Jonathan Majors gave speeches as they praised Jordan's journey in the industry. Jordan admitted that he was overwhelmed with emotion and at the ceremony, and he shared advice for what he would tell his younger self. Take a listen.
Before I get out of here, I just want to say thank you to everybody that's here. The people that really know me, I often say, man, I don't deserve this. You know, it seems very, I don't know. When you're constantly on a journey, I very rarely stop and like smell the roses and like take in moments. I'm always moving on to the next thing. From this fleeting feeling of time slipping away from me, and you know, for the first time in a really long time, I'm taking this moment in, you know. People that I don't know, strangers, people that know me very well, that see me along the way, you know, I'm taking this in, so thank you.
I love that. Stop and smell the roses.
Yeah, it's a good reminder. It's a
Yeah.
good reminder and a great messenger.
Yeah, we're always looking, you know, for what's next. I know for me, I had a real big year in 22, and you know, this year I promised myself just to sit in it, you know, and flourish, and not be so fixed on what's next, what's the next goal, just to sit in the accomplishment, sit in just the whole idea of being, you know, and existing in the goals that I've been able to reach, and just chill for a minute. One
of my old professors used to say that, you know, too often we behave as human doings as opposed to human beings, right?
Good. That's
you know,
good.
and so, you know, what a great reminder from Michael B. Jordan, who's an incredible actor. I mean, you know, he is the present and future of Hollywood.
I agree. Can't sit too long though, because people out here trying to get what you got. You gotta, you know, you gotta stay active now.
Maybe a little more than that.
Okay.
Still ahead, honoring one of the greatest writers of all time, Toni Morrison.
Oh my goodness, legendary. We'll tell you what's being done to pay tribute to the author. That's coming up. You're watching Fox Soul's Black Report.
Welcome back to Fox Soul's Black Report. 8-year-old Kazan Hunter from Little Rock, Arkansas started a GoFundMe account raising over $100,000 to help his favorite Waffle House waiter.
Yep, so during a routine visit with his granddaddy, Kazan took a liking to a particular waiter named Devon Gardner, who you see here. Kazan soon found out that Gardner and his family were living in a motel and having some car issues. That's when the second grader stepped in to help, and to date, the GoFundMe campaign has raised $104,000, and the initial goal, Nicola, was only $5,000.
Wowie kazowie.
What?
Gardner was overwhelmed with Kazan when Kazan presented him with the money, saying that he had been quietly struggling and didn't want to ask anybody for anything. Now, for this little guy to do this out of the kindness of his little heart is really humbling.
Yeah, the children will show us the way. Be like children. That's an amazing story. All righty, Toni Morrison is now forever immortalized on a stamp honoring the prolific writer, editor, scholar, hero that was unveiled in a tribute at Princeton University.
Oh my goodness, where she taught for almost 2 decades. Guest speakers included former President Barack Obama, Michelle Obama, and Oprah Winfrey. Take a listen.
I will be forever grateful for her work and know that we will always have Toni Morrison in our lives because we will always have her words. And now, we have this commemorative stamp. So thank you everyone for being there today to honor her and her magnificent life.
My good, I have a Toni Morrison, Oprah Winfrey moment. Picture it, 1994 maybe, right up in there. Beloved had come out. Oprah was doing what we call a press junket. She came to Detroit at the time. It was the Ritz-Carlton out in Dearborn, and I was selected to be one of 3 journalists who actually got to go to the suite. We had tea and all kind of little sandwiches that I didn't know nothing about at the time. And we were sitting there waiting for Oprah to come on in. And she comes in and she starts singing a particular song. And then she had to go to the bathroom. She said, I'll be right there. She had to go tinkle and came in, and we just sat down. It was supposed to be about the movie, and we talked about the movie, but we just talked about everything from A to Z. And at that time in 94, she was Oprah Winfrey. And just to have that moment to marriage that book, that story, that author, and what Toni Morrison meant to me then and now, and then to partner that with a chat with Oprah Winfrey, who was so passionate about the book, about the movie. It's just something I'll never forget. I have all of the paperwork, because that was, you had to print things out then. There wasn't no computers, and Oprah signed everything for me. It was amazing.
It was amazing, and an amazing book. Beloved was an amazing book. That was my introduction to Toni Morrison. And shout out to Mrs. Adrian, Cindy Adrian, my high school honors English teacher that introduced us to the work of Toni Morrison. I still have that book all dog-eared and written in the margins and everything.
That's a tough book for high school.
It was a tough book, but we got through it and we learned a lot. You know, I just have a deep appreciation for Toni Morrison. She like a lot of us, is a hero. You know, this is someone who was an unapologetic Black author who leaned into it, you know, who wrote about life with Black folks at the center and not on the periphery, not on the margins. And so, you know, in addition to the movie Beloved, there's also a great documentary out about Toni Morrison. I encourage people to check that out, especially on today, International Women's Day. And you know, this morning I was thinking, wow, you know, with this commemorative stamp, like, what am I going to do with the stamp? And so after the show, I'm going to go purchase a whole bunch of stamps. And I'm going to go purchase a whole bunch of Toni Morrison books that I'm going to send to my niece Nyla in California, who loves to read, right? And I'm thinking of Toni Morrison's book, The Source of Self-Regard. It's a collection of essays and short stories. And so, you know, for folks that may not be quite ready for the, you know, honors English read of Beloved, they might enjoy The Source of Self-Regard by Toni Morrison. It was one of her final books. I love her so much.
Yeah, very nice gesture. And she had the most beautiful, silver, puffy, pillowy twists.
Yeah, her
I
locks.
just love that.
Her locks were beautiful.
Yeah.
You know, she's just a beautiful soul. You know, I you know, once considered going to Princeton because of 2 reasons. 1, my former high school classmate, Aaron Bianco, and 2, because Toni Morrison taught at Princeton. And my only regret, don't have many of them, but my only regret is that I didn't stay there long enough to go with him to attend her class. I would have loved to sit in on Toni Morrison's class, and so I guess I got to make it up in life.
Yeah, you'll find a way. All right, for the full rundown on today's stories like this and more, you can access FOXSOUL's video on demand on any of our partners. You can access past shows as well and other Black-centered content. Don't forget, Soulmates, to download the FOXSOUL app. It's absolutely free. I am Courtney Hicks.
And I'm Nicordelai Cortez. Stay lifted.